Hello, NAAIA community. Get ready to relive insightful discussions, gain fresh perspectives, and be inspired by the wealth of knowledge our community has to offer. Let's dive into another episode.
Good afternoon, everyone. And for those who may not be on the East Coast Standard Time, good morning to you. I hope that everybody's having a wonderful day thus far, and thank you for joining us for another NAAIA National Advancing Inclusion webinar. Focus is going to be on courage, culture, and corporate change, honoring Black excellence in action. So we're thrilled to have you for this wonderful and powerful conversation, one that celebrates leadership, resilience, and impact of Black professionals who are transforming the insurance industry every single day. At NAAIA, our mission has always been to create spaces for connection, collaboration, advancement, and advancing inclusion. And this advancing inclusion webinar series, one of many that we will bring that's tied to our mission, is going to be one that's going to come to life. It's a platform that elevates the voices of lived experiences of Black and African American professionals, fostering and exchanging ideas and the development of strategies that support authentic leadership, purposeful growth, and lasting impact within the industry. Speaking of our mission, I encourage you to take a moment to explore the 2025 annual report that was just released on Tuesday, just a few days ago, and that reflected on our growth and expanding impact that is truly inspiring. And even more so, it reinforces the momentum we're building this year. I'm especially excited for where we're headed, including the release of our documentary and preparations for NAAIA's 30th year anniversary, which will occur in 2027. Today's discussion centers around three powerful ideas: courage, culture, and corporate change, the very principles that inspired the creation of Black History Month, which we commemorate this Saturday as it's going to be marking its 100th year anniversary. Through storytelling and dialogue, we explore how cultural identity and lived experience fuel leadership, innovation, and transformation. Our panelists will share their personal journeys, highlighting how embracing heritage and authenticity can drive both personal success and systematic change. This conversation is more than just about leadership. It's about legacy. It's about understanding what cultural pride and professional excellence, that they're not separate, but they're both deeply connected forces shaping for a more equitable and inclusive future for all of us. So before I introduce our moderator, I want to say a special thank you to all of you for the activity that I continue to see in the chat area. Keep sharing and keep sharing from where you're joining us from as well today. And then I also want to say a big thank you again for being here and your continued commitment towards advancing inclusion, equity, and representation in our industry. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Ralph Smithers, Assistant Vice President of Inclusion, Belonging, and Community Relations of Encova Insurance, who will guide us through today's inspiring discussion. Welcome, Ralph.
Thank you, Ricky. I appreciate that kind introduction. And I'm going to say good morning or good afternoon to everyone, wherever you are. It looks like we've got at least the Western Hemisphere covered with all the things I'm seeing in the chat, and I'm really honored to be the moderator today. I am going to start off by listing out who our panelists are going to be, and I'm not going to give a full introduction of them in the interest of time. I'm going to just give you their names and let you know who they are, and then the first question that we'll have for our panelists today will give us a chance to get to know them a little bit better, and we'll be very excited to hear their stories. So our panelists today are Mernice Oliver, who is a Senior Manager of People and Development at Builders. Joy R. Blume is the Vice President, Underwriting Manager at GeneralStar Insurance Services, LLC. And last but not least, we have Dr. Jonathan Cox, who's the Vice President, Center for Policy Analysis and Research with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. So I'd like to thank all of our panelists for being here. And I'd like to start off, and I'm going to ask our panelists if you can go in the order in which I just introduced you to answer the following questions to start us off. Can you briefly share with us your professional journey and how your cultural identity has shaped your leadership perspective or purpose along the way? And we'll start off with Mernice.
Yes. Hey, good afternoon and good morning to everyone there. Thank you so much for having me. It really is an honor to be here today. And thank you so much for posing that first question and allowing us an opportunity to kind of share our stories. And so, my career has always been centered around building people systems. So whether it's, leadership development, career pathways or learning pathways, and I do it right now currently inside Builders Insurance as the people development manager. But what I found is that working in the insurance industry my path was not always linear, right? I really learned early in my career is that success was really not about doing great work or even doing hard work. It really was about understanding how organizations function, how decisions were made, and how one could get visibility. So being obviously a woman of color, a Black woman, it really shaped my leadership in two major ways. First, it really gave me deep empathy for others, for people who are currently navigating the same systems that were not necessarily designed with us in mind. But secondly, it really helped to sharpen my strategic muscle. I became really fluent very early on in reading rooms and building coalitions and alliances and really preparing twice as much. I found myself preparing twice as much for the same visibility. And so what really keeps me grounded and working with leaders who understand that progress is not seasonal. It's not just a one time a year type of a thing. It reminds me of, kind of what currently our CEO shared here at Builders is that, it really has stuck with me. We are the same company that we were yesterday, that we are today. And, that those values and those commitments to the industry and to the folks that we serve here at Builders and our communities that we serve haven't changed. And that type of consistency about our values really has helped me to truly, truly build those strong relationships in the industry and also be able to be prepared to respond in the moment.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's continue to hear some of the backgrounds, and we'll go next to Joy Blume.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm honored to join this panel today. My professional journey has been shaped by both opportunity and intention. I've spent nearly 2 decades in commercial insurance, growing from early underwriting roles into leadership. And along the way, I've learned that credibility is built through consistency, showing up prepared, building trust, and delivering results. As a woman of color in a white male-dominated industry where leadership doesn't look like me, my cultural identity has shaped my awareness and strengthened my leadership style. It's made me more intentional about how I lead teams, advocate for others, and create a safe space for diverse perspectives. I lead with clarity and accountability and empathy, to Mernice's point, because I know it's important to be both seen and heard.
Yeah.
That perspective also fuels my purpose beyond my day-to-day role, whether through industry leadership, mentorship, or service. My goal has always been to excel, but also to leave doors wider than I found them, and help shape the industry where leadership is both inclusive and impactful. I'm a firm believer in lifting as I climb.
Yeah.
Wonderful. That's exactly what we want to hear. Lift as we climb. So last but not least, let's hear from Dr. Jonathan Cox, and let's hear about his journey.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ralph. Much appreciated. I'm so happy to be a part of this panel. With all of you all, this is going to be a great discussion. So for me, one of the things I can probably say outright is that I'm the only person here that's not specifically in the insurance field, right? But again, really glad to be here because I can talk through some of the issues from the perspectives that I've had, right? And so for me, I've been an academic and scholar my entire career. So up until a few years ago, I was in higher education, as an administrator and a professor at a few different institutions, really studying things like race, racism, systemic issues, social problems, all these things, right? And so for me, kind of the professional journey that I've had and what my own culture has meant to me around that was significantly impacted and influenced by the fact that one, I'm a Black man, right? It's like the main identity that I have. And so I can't ever escape that. Not that I want to escape that, right? But that is a huge part of what has shaped me. I also went to Hampton University for undergrad, which is a historically Black university. And so just being deeply entrenched in Black culture for those years and then transitioning to predominantly white spaces after that for further schooling and for work really helped to, develop my sense of self as a Black man and how I show up and how I create space for others, right? Being in a lot of these places where I was the only Black person, particularly in education, the only Black male in a lot of these spaces, right? And so it really helped me to understand how I could create that space for others, right? To help them show up as their authentic selves. And so it really has impacted me a ton, even down to my career now, where I'm working for this nonprofit, the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, where I'm overseeing the research and policy work, right? So I get to do all this work on a daily basis with a team full of Black people who are committed to Black issues and Black communities in a way that I just have not been able to do before, right? And so again, that really carried me through into now. I'm so excited to be in this space.
Thank you. And Dr. Cox, because of the answer that you gave, I'm going to go reverse order for the next question I have, but I think you began to touch on the second question I had for the panel. When you hear the phrase Black excellence, and you may have answered this already, but when you hear it, what does it mean for you personally, and how does that affect how you show up?
Sure. I mean, so I kind of start off, I wake up and I think about the fact that Black people literally built this country, right? And so there's really not much else that needs to be said around our Black excellence. We have been bringing it from the beginning, even when we were brought here against our will. And so when I think of Black excellence, right, it's both the grit and determination that's endemic to our people because of our history in this country, like the meaning that we have to work twice as hard as others, as well as the general excellence that we bring into everything that we have, right? That makes us the change makers, the progenitors and keepers of the culture that other people often steal or imitate, right? Like Black culture is it's great and it is excellence by definition. And so I kind of lean into that every day with the work I'm doing and just to help uplift me as a Black person.
Fantastic. Joy, would you like to tell us how you feel about that?
Absolutely. So I thought long and hard about what Black excellence means to me. And when I think of it, I think it's a culmination of the generations of hardship that have led to extraordinary achievement. Many of us are the descendants of slaves and sharecroppers and communities that were denied access, opportunity, and equity for centuries in a country we were brought to more than 400 years ago, as Jonathan mentioned. And yet today as a community, we're thriving, we're educated, we're influential, and we're prosperous. We continue to stand for what matters and make our voices heard, even when it's uncomfortable. For me, it's deeply personal. I'm the niece of a freedom rider, and I show up every day knowing that these opportunities that I have and career that I built is because of the sacrifices and courage of those who came before me. The perspectives paved the way for me to lead, to excel, and to create safe spaces for others. Black excellence shows up in my work, how I lead, how I advocate, and how I seriously take the responsibility of being in rooms where representation matters. I strive for excellence, not just for myself, but because I know I'm living for my ancestors' wildest dreams. And I intend to honor that legacy every day.
Fantastic. Mernice, what do you think?
Wow. I want to echo what my esteemed colleagues on this panel has shared with me as well. And I agree. Black excellence to me is really not about perfection. It really has always been about being persistent, but persistent with vision. It's about choosing integrity over shortcuts. It is truly about lifting as I climb. It's about being innovative, even when resources were always many times limited. And even in spite of that, building legacies, even when recognition was delayed. I think Joy and I have some kinship. I too am a direct descendant of the Freedom Singers. My grandfather's church was one of the meeting places for the civil rights movement in Albany, Georgia. So my roots run very deeply in the civil rights platform. And so how Black excellence shows up in my work today, it shows up in how intentionally I design programs, how I advocate for fair systems, how I speak up and sponsor those and speak others' names in the rooms that they don't have access to. It's about how I prepare emerging leaders and how I really insist that potential is not hidden. It's right in our face. It's never been hidden, but it's often been unrecognized. It's often been unsupported. And I really believe that excellent doesn't always have to be loud. I think it's durable. And I feel very, honored to be able to stand on the shoulders of others that have come before me, who have really built, as Dr. Cox has said, we built this country. And I am living my ancestors' prayers. I'm living their dreams today. And I get to stand up for what they couldn't stand up before. So that's what Black excellence means to me.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I'm going to just chime in for just a second before we go to our next question. But I've been in the business a very, very long time. I can't believe how long it's been. And I'm sure many of you will relate to the fact that you may be the only in a lot of the spaces that you're in. And one thing about excellence is that when you're in that spot, no one's going to forget who you are. Everyone's going to know who you are. And, you don't want to be the person that causes the next person not to have an opportunity. So I appreciate your responses to that. And that kind of leads us to our next question. And Joy, I'm going to get you ready to answer the questions. I'm going to start with you first, and we'll go into the question. So across industries, and I think especially insurance, we often see talented Black professionals underrepresented at most of the senior levels. From your experience, what systemic or cultural factors most influence who advances, and what helps disrupt those patterns?
To be honest with you, Ralph, I think it's a combination of things. I think that, like Mernice and Dr. Cox mentioned, having people advocate for you, speaking your name in a room where you aren't necessarily there. I think that, having a personal board of directors, having mentors, having sponsors, having all those things in your professional network or in your professional toolkit that is really help you to help with your professional journey, whether that be personal or not. I don't know if you guys are Scandal fans, but, Papa Pope always said we have to be twice as good. We have to, work twice as hard. We have to show up and be our best. And, that's one of the things that we should all be striving for, is to make sure that when we are in the room, we represent ourselves well and put our best foot forward.
Fantastic. Mernice, would you like to add anything to that?
Of course. So what I see most often is really gaps in access. It's access to those stretch assignments that gives us those visibility. It's access to the decision makers, and it's access, quite frankly, to sponsorship. I think far too often they kind of gave us the little carrot. We're going to put you in a mentorship program. I've been in the industry for a long time as well. And I've often seen that I viewed mentorship as something that was an afterthought, to kind of pacify people that were really operating in excellence, but they really didn't have a place for us because it wasn't necessarily designed for us. And really, it's gaps in how readiness is designed. It was a lot of times it was really subjective rather than objective. And so, sometimes advancement really just became more about familiarity than it was about capability and competency. And so what I believe that truly disrupts that is about being transparent about what those opportunity criteria are, and it's about data-driven talent reviews. It's about, intentional success planning and leaders who are really willing to use their influence to elevate others. I believe that it's about building the systems, that are really going to make a difference, because in my opinion, talent isn't always evenly distributed, if that makes sense. It really is. Opportunity is not. So I really hope and believe, my hope is that right now, because this is Black History Month right now, is probably one of the most critical Black History Months of my lifetime, in the current climate that we're in. But it's really about opening our eyes and really allowing those gaps to truly be disrupted and not necessarily be the norm anymore.
Fantastic. Dr. Cox, you're going to bring a different perspective, I suspect. Having not really been in the industry maybe the same way as the other panelists. So I know this, we definitely mentioned that this isn't just an insurance industry opportunity, it's across industries. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, I love what Mernice and Joy already talked about in terms of some of the barriers that exist, right? I think many of us are very fluent in the ways in which Black people have experienced the discrimination and barriers throughout U.S. history, right? And so we know we don't get callbacks as much as other peers, right? We actually know some research shows that white people with criminal records are more likely to get a callback for a job than a Black person without a criminal record, right? It's insane things that are happening. The bias with regards to unfair assessment, and when it comes to even promotions and things, right? Like I was a co-authored a piece a while ago with another sociologist where we, did some experiments and showed that a Black man, that in this design that we had was less likely to receive a promotion, even though he was like very demonstrably more qualified than the white peer that was also there, right? And a lot of that ties to the ways in which people have their own biases and their beliefs that they're completely unaware of, or the ways the systems and structures are set up. And so for me, I really think about this in terms of like that's kind of the piece of how we get past this. How do we disrupt some of these things? And so for me, again, a part of what has already been mentioned here, changing systems and structures themselves, right? They need to be more transparent, more accessible for sure, more equitable, more culturally responsive. You definitely need to address individual and organizational biases, right? Like everybody has them, every org does. You got to be able to identify them, and particularly thinking about the individuals with decision-making power, their biases, the ways in which they are just going about their everyday decision-making things that they have to do. That really matters, right? They need to be aware of the biases they have and how that impacts their actions. And then in terms of identifying and changing the org structure and culture, right, you need to identify what the issue is. You got to be able to talk about it. You can't act like it's not there. You need to say, what's the issue that we have? It may not be the same issue as other orgs. And then what are our goals that we're going to set that are very clear and measurable to overcome these issues? And how are we lining up accountability for both the org and individuals, right? And then the last thing I think is for us, right? Is for the Black people who are in these spaces, often the only ones, right? I think we've been conditioned throughout history to think that there can only be one Black person, right? Like the Highlander effect. Or we can't push for more Black people in other spaces because people are going to see us as doing that. And they're going to be like, it's preferential, it's favoritism, even though other people have been doing that and they're going to continue to do that, right? So I advocate for us to go ahead and step up and do those, particularly the higher up you already are yourself. Like lift while you climb. Open the door for somebody else, share information and experiences, right? You can do this in a way that's authentic to you and doesn't make you feel like you are, right, stepping outside of how you want to present yourself in your given situation.
That's a great point. In fact, I will say that I have heard that sometimes there are quotas, but the quota is one. So that's a really great point. So I'd like to ask a question that has to do with some of the techniques that are used for disruption. And I'm not sure, I know that our panelists have read it, but I'm not sure if the audience is familiar with NAAIA's Next Steps on the Journey research. It's really fantastic if you haven't seen it. But according to that study, it says that research, mentorship, and sponsorship programs do exist in a lot of organizations, yet many of them have not consistently translated into sustained career advancement for Black professionals. And I'm not going to direct this question to any. I'm going to let our panelists chime in. I'm going to try to see if we could just let that happen naturally this time. From your experience, how have mentorship, sponsorship, or community shaped your journey, and what must organizations do differently to move beyond the performative support and create pathways that truly develop, retain, and advance Black talent? So I'm going to let whoever's passionate jump in first, and we'll give the other panelists an opportunity to jump in as well.
How are we doing this? I don't mind jumping in first if y'all want to go after. So for me, when I think about mentorship and communities as being the things that have really driven me the most, And I am in the spaces that I'm in now, the spaces I've been historically, really in large part due to the mentors that I've had, right? And the communities that I've been surrounded by. Mentors helped to show me like what was possible. They helped show me different avenues for moving or ways of doing it. And then really importantly, they helped open doors to let me know about here's an opportunity. I'm going to talk to that person to let them know they should get you for this opportunity. But like that has happened over and over and over again. And then communities as well, right? Just showing up when I need them, providing safe spaces, sometimes helping to meet physical needs, right? Things like that. Those are really, really key for me. And so those are things that I also try to live out as I'm moving forward. How can I reach back in the same ways?
Fantastic. Thank you. Who else would like to jump in on that one?
I'll jump in, of course. I really think mentorship has helped me think bigger, but it's been sponsorship that changed my life and changed my career. And I mean that because mentors, they kind of coach me behind the scenes, but it was the sponsors who spoke my name in the room that I didn't have access to. I think far too often, many organizations kind of stop at mentorship because it feels comfortable, right? It feels like, but sponsorship really requires courage and it requires accountability. And so I believe what really moves the needle in terms of is measuring the outcomes, not the intention. We all have great intentions, right? But what are really truly the outcomes? Who gets promoted? Who is being put forward for that enterprise work? Who is listed as a successor or who is being made visible and offered those stretch opportunities? And I can say that currently I appreciate the leaders that I work with right now who understand that development is not charity. It's not something, but it truly is a strategy behind it. When executives really show up as an ally, as a sponsor, I really believe that, it signals that the work is embedded and it's not something that's just optional.
Fantastic. Would you like to jump in there, Joy?
Sure. So, I think it's so important to have mentors and sponsorships that look like you, but I think it's equally important to have people that don't look like you because they give you different perspectives and make you think about things that you normally wouldn't think about. Like we have our own unconscious bias against ourselves, like especially as a woman of color, is my skirt too tight? Is my nail polish okay? Can I wear braids to this board meeting? I think that they are the ones that really show us and help us look inside ourselves and say, what, this is okay. Me showing up with braids doesn't negate my professionalism. It doesn't negate what I bring to the table. So having those people in your corner, I think is so important, whether they look like you or not. Black, white, male, female, so on and so forth. And just being, uncomfortable or being comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. I had a white senior male executive reach out to me many years ago and said, hey, this was during the George Floyd situation, and said, I just want to have a conversation. I want to understand better. I want to make sure that I'm showing up as my best self for my colleagues that are, emotional and going through things because of all of the plights that were, going on during that specific time. And I appreciated him for reaching out and saying, I just want to have an open dialogue conversation about what your experience has been. And if there's anything that I can do as a white male leader to, help my colleagues come along further in the industry.
Fantastic. And thank you very much for all those profound insights. And I want to remind our audience that we definitely want to structure things so that we have time to entertain your questions. I can see the chat and there's some great dialogue and interactions occurring, but I would love for you to begin thinking of questions that you might want to have for our panelists, and we're going to work real hard to make sure we allow some time for that. And kind of in that interest, and we're going to go back kind of to the original order as far as this question is concerned. And by the way, our panelists have not seen any of these questions. It's totally spontaneous, and they're just totally coming up with these wonderful answers. No, that's not true, but but I am going to switch the order a little bit because I want to make sure we have some good dialogue. So I'm going to start with you, Mernice, on this one. For those that are seeking greater influence, I think ultimately the reason that anyone wants to get involved with an organization like NAAIA or any of the other or professional development organizations organizations is that obviously we appreciate the fellowship, but we also want to be able to use this to help us get to that next rung of the ladder. So for those that are seeking greater influence, whether through leadership roles, entrepreneurship, ownership, or thought leadership, what mindsets or strategies are essential for moving from the contributor to a change maker?
Ooh, now that is a good question. Yeah. I think the shift really happens when you stop asking, how well did I do? Or how well am I performing? But you're asking, what systems can I improve? How can I lend my hand to truly shift the needle inside of this organization? I believe that, change makers really cultivate three things. One, it's about strategy. It's about visibility, for actually ownership mindset, and really having that narrative power. They volunteer for enterprise work. They document the impact. They build cross departmental relationships, right? They learn how to nurture those relationships, but they also learn how to speak the language of the business. I often hear that, in the meetings that I'm in. Do you truly understand our business, and can you speak our language here? Because influence really is not about a title. It really isn't. I believe it's about the value that an individual can create. And so I would hope that anyone that is listening, you take some time, or I want to encourage you and challenge you to take some time to really think about, okay, not, kind of checking off the little checklist that you have, or what's your scorecard, but really, what did you improve? What did you influence, and what was your impact there? Think about that, and how you can show up differently come tomorrow morning or Monday morning inside of the organizations or in your business on Monday. How can you show up differently?
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Mernice. Joy, what do you think?
Just to piggyback a little bit off of what Mernice said, keeping a brag book of things that you've accomplished throughout the year within the organization, whether you've streamlined a process or, help make something as far as helping the company save money in certain avenues or whatnot. So, when you go to your review or when you're meeting with senior leadership, having that information available to you to say, these are the things that I've done to help the organization move forward throughout my tenure since I've been here. And, just laying it all out, documenting everything, and just making sure that the leaders and change makers within the organization see that you're fully present and focused and, wanting to do more for the organization.
Fantastic. Dr. Cox?
I'm not sure I have much to add to that. I think I would echo some of what's already been said, right? For me, if I'm thinking about folks that want to move up or get that change, I'm most of what I'm thinking about or telling them is you need to be thinking about how you are bringing solutions to problems, not just bringing problems. Or like nobody wants to promote you or bring you into something if all you're going to do is point out what's wrong. What can you do proactively, right? That's one of the core values of my organization is proactivity. What are you doing to proactively assess your role? What could be different about it? What could be changed? And then beyond your role, what could be different, but in a way that is considerate of where you are now, where you might want to be, what the org is, right? You don't want to just go in and trash or make it sound like you're just saying all these negative things about the organization.
Fantastic. And I have to say that as I'm hearing the responses, I can't resist to jump. I was thinking, how could I answer this question myself, but do it as succinctly as possible? So I'm going to attempt to do that if the panel doesn't mind. But, what about just raising your hand? There are so many opportunities out there to raise your hand and take on responsibility. Sometimes if you get involved, whether it be with NAAIA or any other service outside of your organization, you can pick up skills and create networks and do things that are maybe even above your current pay grade with respect to the decisions and opportunities you have. So if you don't mind, I'm going to add raise your hand because we're going to ask everyone to raise their hand here real soon as we get to the audience questions in a very short time. So thank you for your insight on that. And now I'd like
Can
to
I add one more thing to
please,
that? It was just something I was thinking about. I believe that relationships are truly the currency that you use to build your career. And so I would add to everything everyone else has added. It's about making sure that you're nurturing those relationships, no matter how small or how large or what the title is. It's about making sure that you are truly investing yourselves in nurturing relationships throughout the organization. Whether you're saying good morning to, the janitor in the morning, or if you're going in and you're addressing the CEO, you truly have to really make sure that you are intentional about the relationships that you're developing every day. So thank you for that. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. So I think what you're saying is that your network is your net worth.
Absolutely.
All right. Ring the bell. Fantastic. All right. Good deal. So we'll go kind of in reverse order on this one. A lot of our members work in corporate environments where advancement can feel limited. And for those who have chosen ownership or entrepreneurship, what do you believe sets them up for success both professionally and within their communities? And I'll let anyone jump in who wants to take that one. But please don't look at me. Please answer.
I thought Joy wanted to take that one. So
go ahead, Mernice.
So because I've been on both sides, so I ran my own consulting firm for quite some time, and now I'm over here and I have the privilege of, managing the people development function at Builders. But what I see really amongst successful entrepreneurs is really clarity of purpose. That was one of the first things that I really had to tie down when I decided I would branch over into the entrepreneurship realm. It was really about identifying a gap or a problem within my community that I had the tools or I had the solution for. Being disciplined in my execution. I didn't have someone saying you got to be here at 9 o'clock and you got to, you can leave at 4 or whatever. It really had to be my own discipline, but also the deep connection that I had inside of my community, whatever that was. And it happened to be the insurance industry, but also investing in my own learning. No one was saying, Mernice, this is your learning path and you got to go take this course, to make sure that you're checking a box. It was about building financial literacy. Am I managing the resources that are available to me, even though they may be limited? But also, how do I treat my true ownership, not just as personal success, but am I really being generational opportunity? It wasn't just about me building it for myself, but was I going to be able to pull my son along with me? Or was I going to be able to reach back into my community and mentor that young woman at high school who had entrepreneur aspirations? And so it wasn't all about just what I was getting out of it, but it truly was about, yes, building that generational commitment, but also how I could show up every day and really be a responsible citizen and contribute to the success of my community.
Fantastic. Joy, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, absolutely. So even for entrepreneurs and for people working in corporate America, never stop learning. I always say be a sponge. You have to always learn, absorb, make sure you're staying abreast of the latest, trends and influencers and AI and all that stuff that's going to help make you as an entrepreneur more successful. Just, never stop learning, never stop absorbing knowledge. And, when you do get that knowledge, it's okay to pass it along to others. But I think that, getting to a point where you're like, oh, I've learned everything, I know it all, I can do anything. That's, never an attitude that you want to have, whether you're an entrepreneur or in the corporate space.
Fantastic. Do you have anything to add, Dr. Cox?
I want to say, no, I'm the student here. I was taking notes on what they were saying. I wrote it all down.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we've got a couple more prepared questions, and then I am looking at the Q&A that the audience is adding, and there's some really good ones in there, so I can't wait to get to those. But a lot of professionals feel pressure to code switch or minimize parts of themselves to succeed. What have you learned about navigating authenticity while still protecting your opportunities and well-being? Do you mind if we start with you, Dr. Cox?
Sure. So in terms of code switching, so just being frank, at this point, I no longer do it. Right. Or I guess I could say maybe I do it a little different than I used to. I definitely still feel the pressure. I'm going to be very clear, right? I feel the pressure to do that in many spaces. I just made a decision, I think after I hit 30 some time ago, like, I don't want to, I want to show up differently. I'm tired of checking myself in certain ways that really was only serving other people and not serving me, right? And so at this point, really, I think about it's less about making others comfortable and more about being my authentic self, right? And to me, that includes things like consideration and compassion. So that does impact how I show up and how I still engage with people, right? I'm not just going to be myself to the detriment of others. But what I think is that, being true to myself, it actually serves everybody better, right? Especially me, obviously, right? But I think I don't have to manage those dual selves, multiple selves, which literally frees up brain space and capacity to be able to think about and do other things. But then also other people know who's going to show up, right? They know who they're going to get because I am being myself, and they may not be looking like, say, oh, you're different in this space than you were in this space. Who am I talking to, right? And so again, in terms of like what that looks like, for me, that's really looked like not backing away from sharing things that make others uncomfortable, right? So there was an example, I think Joy actually brought this up with the murder of George Floyd. That was a major turning point in my career and how I was engaging with folks because at that point, right, I was in a department at a university. I was the only Black person in this department. And so after George was murdered, some of the colleagues reached out in the same way that Joy mentioned, right, to ask how I was doing, et cetera. Most didn't. Most didn't check in. The department decided they wanted to release like this statement in support of Black people, and I kind of counseled them like, maybe you want to think about like what the purpose of this and what you're doing, given the experiences that Black students have in this department. They ignored me, but I still talked about it, right? I still made sure that we were not going to go into faculty meetings for that, and me not talk about the impacts that this moment had on me in that space, the students that we had, like all of this, right? So they had to be able to deal with that. And again, I didn't do this in a way that was intending to create additional problems, but to be authentic and to let folks know, like, this is something we need to be thinking about, even if it's not something that you are. And so again, I'm not at this point, no longer really a code switcher. I do recognize there's some privilege that I may have in being able to do that in certain spaces, particularly now being at a Black organization. But again, I think it's just really important that I am able to bring my authentic self. And then by doing so, I believe that helps free up other people after me and around me to also be themselves when they maybe feel like they can't for whatever reason.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Joy, what do you think about the code switching question?
So I mean, we would all be lying if we said we didn't code switch, on a day-to-day basis. This is a part of, being people of color, in, a predominantly white environment or organization. But to Dr. Cox's point, I think showing up as your authentic self and, just saying, this is who I am, take it or leave it. A lot of that comes with age. It comes with wisdom. It comes as you climb the corporate ladder, but you do get to a point where you're like, you know what? This is who you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, but I'm not going to apologize for who I am and, my success and what I've brought to the table.
Fantastic. And Mernice, what do you think?
Yeah. Wow. So code switching this was kind of a sensitive question for me, to be honest. It kind of triggered me a little bit because I was thinking about, my career and being just in retrospect. Yes, I absolutely code switched. But I didn't see it as an option. I didn't have an option not to. I really saw it as something that was required of me. I had to speak differently. Joy mentioned earlier, I was very conscientious. Can I come to work with braids on? I had a manager to call me out because I wore a purple suit to work rather than the black and brown and khaki the sea of black and brown and khaki suits that were there. And so, but now, to Dr. Cox's point, yes, full circle, yes, age comes wisdom, right? Absolutely, I think of authenticity as knowing when and how to deploy all parts of myself and not abandoning them. it's okay that I have a Southern accent that I was reluctant to allow people to hear. And it was okay that I could show up and wear my door knocker earrings. I'm just, saying little things. But, I just learned how to read context very clearly, but not to shrink. I saw it as an opportunity that would really protect my momentum while building my career power. And so over time, I believe your credibility grows, but you gain more freedom to reshape what the norms truly look like. And so the goal now for me is not assimilation. The goal is really about sustainability, but sustainability with integrity. And I mean integrity to myself and also to the organization that I represent.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to move now into more of what I'd like to call a lightning round and try to answer some of the questions that the audience has. And we've got quite a few questions, and we're going to do our best. I don't know if we'll get to all of them, but we're going to do our best to get to as many of them as we can. But there was one that just really jumped out at me that I'd like to ask the panel to chime in on. How do you find a mentor that looks like you through networking and other various avenues? And what suggestions that you have? Because, we're underrepresented in a lot of places. So how do you navigate that? So I'll just ask whoever feels most passionate to start, and we'll get all those that want to chime in on that.
Okay, I'll jump in. So I think oftentimes, because we are, and still is, it's still a predominantly white industry, and insurance is, it's difficult sometimes to find a mentor that looks like you. But I've always recommended, and I still suggest, and I've done it myself, sometimes you have to look outside of the industry that you're in. What skill set or what capability or competency are you looking to further develop and grow? And you identify and look for mentors that have that expertise. So it may not be in insurance. It may be someone who is a CFO at an accounting organization. It may be someone who is a consultant over at Deloitte. So you just have to really decide, what is it that I'm looking for? What are my needs in terms of how I need to develop myself? What am I looking to develop? And then seek out those individuals that have that expertise that you're looking to build.
Fantastic. Any other thoughts on that from the rest of the panel?
Yeah, I'll chime in real quick. I would just say, being intentional about what you're looking for in a mentor and what you're looking to get out of that said mentor. It doesn't have to just be a conversation of, hey, do you want to be my mentor? It should be organic. It should be you being able to get to know this person and saying, I've admired your career and what you bring to the table, and I'd like to get some insight from you. Can we sit down and have coffee once a quarter? Or just help me come along in the industry. These are the things I'm struggling with. But it doesn't have to just be, you find a person, will you be my mentor? It should be, organic, and it should be a process where you guys are moving along further in your mentor-mentee relationship.
Fantastic. Any other thoughts on that one?
The only thing I would say is I would think of it almost as like getting a roster or a community of mentors, right? So you may need more than one. And I often look for more than one. I definitely have several mentors. They all can touch on different things for me, right? So that can kind of spread it out where it might be difficult to find one person that can do everything.
Yeah.
I call it my board of directors.
Yep.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
There you go.
It is. Board of directors.
Yes, my board of directors. Yes.
Now, I have two that I'd like to throw in real quick. One, I think I saw someone say join NAAIA as one. So yes, that's why we're here. And I'll tell you another one that I would just say, just to the person that asked the question. Obviously, it makes it a lot easier if you feel comfortable with the person, but don't limit who your mentors are. Go with the people that you share some feelings about. It may not be someone that looks like you, but don't limit yourself, because you don't want to cut yourself off from opportunities. So we have about 5 more minutes before we're going to give it back to Ashley. So I'd like to. I'm trying to scroll through these. They're all great questions, and I'm just picking up ones that just sort of strike me. So I hope, I hope that those that I don't choose know that we're seeing them, but we just can't get to everyone. But we had one of our young millennial leaders chime in, and our young millennial leader says, not only is my skin and gender challenged, but my age is constantly questioned in my leadership decision. Our industry is experiencing retirements at accelerated speed, so we need new leaders stepping in, yet this industry can't accept some younger than them leading. What advice do you have? And I love this question because, believe it or not, I was in that situation. I started in the insurance business as a 19-year-old, so I've seen it all. But I'd like to ask our panel what you think about having to deal with kind of like the multiple strikes that you might carry into a situation.
I mean, I think what comes to mind for me is like the best antidote, or one of the best antidotes to this, is simply being great at what you do, right? Like I think people tend to fall in line once they see that you're doing things, and sometimes, unfortunately, you do have to like quote unquote prove yourself in a space, right? Whether it's a new space or you're the young person or the Black person, whatever it is. And so you just got to continue to be excellent, right? That's a big part of doing that. I think also there's a level to which you as an individual can learn how to manage or work with people from different generations, right? Like I'm seeing that often with a lot of my like Gen Z employees, that is just a completely different group of folks than millennials or than the Gen Xers, right? And so you might have to go backwards in terms of understanding generations and what motivates them, how they understand, how to best to connect with them, given that you are a different type of person. There are lots of resources out there you can find to assist with that.
Fantastic. Any other thoughts on that one?
I'll chime in real quick. I was just going to say to Dr. Cox's point, finding a commonality with the people that you're going to be leading. I have a gentleman on my team that's almost 80, and I have someone on my team that's just out of college. So obviously, keeping them all engaged and how we can best show up as ourselves every day is completely different for everyone on my team. But just making sure that you're being the best leader that you can be and asking for feedback as far as what they need from you to be successful.
Yeah.
Profound. Mernice?
Yeah, I think they've answered it well. I think one thing that kind of popped up for me was, consider how you're showing up. I often like to think, your career, you own it, right? It's the onus of you to go out and make those opportunities for yourself. That's what we've historically done for hundreds of years, coming from the Black community. We created HBCUs because of lack of access to education. We created banks because we couldn't get, loans. And so why you have to really consider, how are you going to create your own path and build your own opportunities? How are you showing up? And then don't forget, I talked about this currency. What are the relationships that you're building?
Fantastic. So I think we have time for one more question. And I'll tell you what, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt to some of the shorter questions because I can read them a little more quickly. And let's treat this as a lightning round panel. This will kind of be our last message that we leave to the audience. How do you advocate and create opportunities for yourself? And let's start. Joy, do you mind if I pick on you?
I advocate and create opportunities for myself by just being who I am, what I bring to the table. My elementary school principal said she told my mom I would never amount to anything because I was different. And I always keep that in the back of my mind. And it's a reminder to me to show up and it's okay to be different every day.
Wonderful. Very appropriate. Mernice, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, and that is, identifying where those gaps are. They exist everywhere. And how can you help solve those problems, or what solutions can you bring to the table that may not have been considered? I've always thought of myself as an independent thinker. I don't think the same way as other people do, and that's okay, right? But also, how am I offering those thoughts as viable solutions to the problems and the challenges that I see?
Fantastic. Dr. Cox.
First, I would say believe in yourself, right? You deserve to be in the spaces in which you occupy. If so, fight against that imposter syndrome with everything you've got. And then take risks, right? It takes you can't what they say, scared money don't make money. You gotta make sure that you are willing to step out on a limb to express who you are, what you're about, and the ways in which you want to, create positive impact. And that you got to share your own story, or else nobody else may do it.
Fantastic. Well, panel, thank you so much for your profound insight. We pulled this one off, I think, pretty close to the time that we were asked. So I'm going to ask Ashley White to come back on and close us out.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ralph, Mernice, Joy, and Jonathan, Dr. Cox, for everything that you've done and the wisdom. The chat was blowing up.
Thank you for watching this flashback episode of NAAIA. We appreciate your time and hope you found the insights valuable. Stay tuned for more enriching content. Until next time, thank you for being a part of the NAAIA community.